So let's say you're getting ready to get on the subway, just listening to your phone, try not to make eye contact with anyone. Then, bam! Here comes this totally angry, out of his mind, smelly guy, and he wants to use your phone. You're like, hell to the no. Then he pulls out a knife and tries to throw you onto the subway tracks, so you get electrocuted and run over. You get away. But that was close. If you had paid attention on YouTube, you would have known to stay away from the subway. You would have known just to stay away from New York City entirely. Now, when you look at crime numbers, the Northeast is totally safe. I mean, it's not perfect, and there's druggies and thieves around every corner, but when it comes to violence, it's not too bad, actually. Every single other state in the Northeast is blue, and blue is good. Yes, even New Jersey. But New York is about average. It's far more dangerous in this state than anywhere else in the region, especially in the places we're going to talk about. What's up, everybody? Right now we're undercover. We're in Coney Island. That's in Brooklyn. And right now we're looking for a perp. So I'm going to put on my super secret camera. Let's see if we can find him. Yeah, he ain't around here. I'll keep looking for him. That's just kind of how it is in New York City. These criminals just do whatever they want. They're not afraid of me. I'm going to go check out another part of New York City in a little bit. If you think that you are tough in New York, there's a lot of trouble. Everybody here will tell you better hide from all of the dangerous. New York. There were 70,000 violent crimes in this state last year, which is just terrible. And crime in the state of New York is up by a whopping 45% year over year. Take into consideration the huge rise in crime, the crowds, the traffic, and the cost of living, and it's no wonder this is the state with the third highest number of refugees. In the last 2 years alone, more than 140,000 people fled this state for good. People are just voting with their feet, or their moving vans. In the cities we're going to talk about, there's robberies in broad daylight, carjackings, and daily shootings. There's crackheads breaking into homes, and lots of overdoses, like here in Schenectady. We begin our danger tour of New York State in a place you might not have heard of. Well, people in New York know about Schenectady. It's kind of a rundown city of about 60,000 people, just a short drive from the state capital of Albany. Crime rates are double the state average here. You'd have a 1 in 142 chance of being beaten, raped, or killed if you spend a year in Schenectady. Now, to compare that to a relatively safe city, in a place like Cary, North Carolina, you'd have a 1 in 1,481 chance of being a victim. A real big difference. Look at the crimes per square mile compared to the state average. Just wow. This article talks about the high crime in this place. The Schenectady PD says they're going about the typical route to reduce gun violence here. You know, removing guns off the streets. They took about 100 guns off the streets of Schenectady last year, but it doesn't really seem to matter. Look at just a sample of the shootings here. Man shot in his front yard, man shot in his home, shot at the bar, shot at the hospital. What? Prostitution and drugs are bad here. There's a lot of jerk teenagers here too. You know, kids who throw rocks at cars or steal lawn ornaments or vandalize churches just because. Crime isn't just bad downstate either. Some of the worst areas for crime are in upstate. We're going way upstate for our 9th most dangerous place to live in New York, Watertown. There's only 25,000 people up here in this Jefferson County community, but there's only 6 other cities in this whole state with a higher number of robberies per capita. Here in Watertown, you have a 1 in 23 chance of being robbed, and there's only 1 other city in the state with a higher number of rapes per capita. That's just sick. Only 3% of all other U.S. cities have a higher crime rate than little Watertown. What the hell? And crime's going up here too lately. Since 2019, the BS is up 20% year over year. So what gives? Well, this is a pretty poor place where about a quarter of the population lives in poverty. There's a lot of store vacancies and not a lot of jobs either. Drug use is through the roof. Last year saw the highest number of ODs in Jefferson County in at least 20 years. And apparently, Jefferson County ranks first in the state for number of meth labs, too. As you might expect, the population is dropping here, as it is all over this state. Copy that, Tammy. HQ. All right, so right now we're in the Bronx, and I think I got a perp. Of course, I'm undercover, and I think he might be over there inside of that bar. So we're going to go in and we're going to try to find out if that's where the perp is. Albany is the state capital, but it's not less dangerous. It's 8th worst in the state for violent crimes per capita. You'd have a 1 in 132 chance of being attacked every year if this was your home. Plus a car is stolen every other day here too. Shootings were up 264% in 2020, and the number of gunshot victims is up 379%. The homicide rate's up 800%. One local pastor said he's been working with people on the streets here for a long time, and he's never seen the violence like this. It's so bad in Albany that every day the county sheriff's department has to send in dozens of extra officers to assist. Albany County Sheriff Craig Apple said, "We need to get back to targeting nuisance crimes. You know, the low-level quality of life crimes. When you start to let this stuff grow, it just bushels." I think he means grows. So why is it so bad here? I mean, this is the state capital. Or maybe that's the problem, the New York state government. The state's Association of Chiefs of Police president says bail reform and other legislation undermines the ability of law enforcement agencies to do their jobs. He says New York State's taken away his ability to keep people safe. The state of New York's bail reform means judges can't set cash bail for a lot of people charged with crimes. So they just get out of jail and they often don't return for their hearings. They might change that, but for now, that's the way it is here. And it seems silly, but that's what they're doing. Another upstate city, another dangerous place to live. Syracuse is the 6th most violent place you can live in this state. It's also the 7th highest for robberies. Last year, this city saw more murders than any year since 2010. In many parts of Syracuse, it's very poor and very violent and very run down. An astounding 30% of the population here lives in poverty, but some of those are college students. Keep that in mind. Just a few years ago, Syracuse led the nation in the highest concentration of poverty among blacks and Hispanics. Is there a correlation between poverty and crime? Well, not in many other countries, but here there is. Again, a lot of it has to do with police reform. Law enforcement's hesitant to do its job because they're handcuffed by legislation. One county sheriff in Fulton County, which is also a terrible place for crime, says there needs to be some serious race relations dialogue between whites, blacks, and the police. I don't see him in Queens. He's got to be around here somewhere. Where is that perp? There's a little place about 90 minutes north of New York City called Newburgh. You probably haven't heard of it, but it is bad, bad, bad here. There's only 28,000 people in town here, but some of the worst pockets in Newburgh have crime rates that are 3 times higher than some of the biggest cities in this state. It's a lot of poverty, drugs, trash, and desperate, crazy people. You have about a 1 in 90 chance of being attacked, killed, or raped here every year, or a 1 in 7,000 chance of being killed. The murder rate here is way higher than the national average. Other numbers like rapes and robberies are 4 and 5 times higher than the U.S. average. The cops are trying here. They just can't keep up. Binghamton's a really crummy place to live. A lot of the data says it's the worst place to live in the whole state. And residents here agree. It's just a poor place with little opportunity. This little town down near Pennsylvania has the state's 5th highest violent rate and its 4th highest robbery rate. There's a violent crime here every single day. There's only 44,000 people here. Binghamton's in Broome County. Incidentally, this is the only county we're going to talk about that's sort of conservative. It's about 50-50 here. Still looking for that perp. He's not in Manhattan. Rochester is another city in upstate New York that's struggling to keep a handle on things. The number of violent and property crimes here are both in the top 10 for the state. Rochester even has a higher murder rate per capita than Chicago does. And it's getting worse here too. The murder rate in Rochester is up 126% in the past 5 years, and that's a bigger spike than even Buffalo or Syracuse. Last year, there were more than 80 murders here, which is more than any other year on record. What is going on in Rochester? Plus, more than 400 people were shot here last year. That's more than one a day, and there's only 200,000 people here. If you moved here, there'd be a 1 in 500 chance you'd get shot. And apparently, it's a lot of kids. More people under the age of 18 were shot here last year than in any other time in the last decade. That is just a damn shame. One police captain said, "We need the community to step up. We need to re-examine what we're doing as a community. It's not working. There's a lot of issues and problems within the system we need to correct and problems we need to fix. And at the end of the day, everybody's on the same team." When I say we, I don't mean the police department. Certainly we have a part in it, but I mean everybody within the criminal justice system and all the leaders of the school district. We're all failing. Amen to that, brother. Another officer says criminal justice reforms are to blame. If somebody's a repeat offender doing the same actions over and over, if somebody's a flight risk, if somebody's a danger to themselves or other people, we can show that to a judge, and we should be able to detain those people. And get this, with all the spike in crime and all the BS going on in Rochester, some people pushed for police reform. This woman, Stanley Martin, ran for Rochester City Council on a platform that focused on defunding and eventually abolishing the police. She actually won, and Rochester police lost millions in cuts. The city councilwoman said, "We believe police make neighborhoods more dangerous and they perpetuate fear and violence." Well, that didn't work, did it? Cutting the cops? Hello, lady, did that work? You know the answer. It did not. It's really sad when you cross the border from Canada and you enter the U.S. at Niagara Falls, and your first impression of the U.S. and the state of New York is Niagara Falls. This place is super bad for crime and poverty. One guy told a story about how he crossed over the border at the falls, and within 11 minutes, somebody tried to rob his family at gunpoint. What is going on, people? There's about 48,000 people here, but it's the third most dangerous in the state for violence. You'd have about a 1 in 100 chance of being a violent crime victim if you spent a year here. That's based on numbers from 2 years ago, though. It's so bad here that the police department didn't actually report their violent crime numbers last year. The BS is everywhere here, especially in the hoods right along the river. Lawmakers here again blame the crime on the state's Democratic-ran criminal justice system. One state senator here said the increase in shootings and murders and assaults is because these losers are being let out of jail. The only people benefiting from the criminal justice reforms in New York State are the criminals. And that's a sorry state we're in when our criminals are getting better treatment than our citizens. Of course, Buffalo's on here. Come on now. This has become the second most violent place in the whole state. Just like in nearby Niagara Falls, you'd have about a 1 in 100 chance of being killed, raped, or beaten up every year here in Buffalo. The city also has the second highest murder rate in the state and the fourth highest burglary rate. Look at this spike in crime here. Homicides are up 88% in Buffalo, along with a 57% spike in shootings. What is going on in Buffalo, and what the hell is going on in our country, people? Statistically, Buffalo's the 12th most dangerous mid-sized city in the nation, but it feels way worse some days here. On the average year, they only manage to solve about 1 in 4 murders. Before the recent spike, crime here in Buffalo had been going down. Experts say more cops, locking people up in jail, and community-based groups helped. See, Rochester City Council lady, Buffalo seems to be trying to figure it out. You could blame some of the problem on poverty here. 30% of the population here needs some form of government assistance, and the average resident here earns only about 22 grand a year. In the state of New York, that goes like nowhere. But do you have to be an a-hole or a lunatic or a sicko just because you're poor? Killings, robberies, assaults, rapes? Is it the drugs? Is it the desperation? Or just stupidity? Look around, people. It's not just happening in Buffalo. It's a thing all over this once proud nation. And it's quickly making its way to your nice little fancy neighborhood too. We don't just need police reform. A lot of us are just way past punishment. These people don't care about going to jail. It's almost like they're not even human anymore. And where's our most dangerous place to live in the whole state of New York? Where do you think it is? Crime in New York City is higher than it's been since the 90s. Homicides are up 45% again last year after a big spike in 2019. Shootings are up 100%, and shooting victims are way up too. Sexual assaults are up 322%. What the damn hell, New York City? Of course, to be fair, we have to add some perspective. Look at how bad things were in the early 90s. New York City had 2,200 murders that year. That's just unbelievable. But the early 90s were dangerous in all U.S. cities, weren't they? So the crime had been going down, but this chart doesn't show the last 4 years. Look at this. It's the Citizens app online. You put in a city and it'll show you where all the shootings have happened. Look at New York City today, people. And these are only the shootings that are reported. You can't ride the subway here without worrying about getting shot or stabbed or pushed onto the tracks. You can't even walk around in many parts of this city anymore without worrying about getting robbed or punched for no reason by some crazy, unstable people. It used to be shootings happened in back alleys in this place. Now it's just happening in broad daylight on crowded streets. This is telling. More New Yorkers worry about getting attacked than they do getting COVID. That's just crazy. Check out the number of drug arrests. That's way down. You think there's a correlation between prosecuting people and crime? Because there is. And again, we come to the conversation about bail reform. The NYPD says a lot of lowlives who get out without bail go on to commit major crimes again. I think that's common sense, but New York state lawmakers want to keep people out of jail. And look what happens. People think they can get away with whatever they want. The Bronx DA says what we're seeing now is just a total disrespect for humanity. Amen to that. Some New York City leaders have called for actually prosecuting criminals again, like when Rudy did. Some say they need federal help to prevent all the guns coming up from the South from getting into the hands of the teenagers. Is this a mental health crisis? Is this a poverty thing? Or are a lot of people just too crazy to be trusted to live among us anymore? Yeah, it might be a combination of all those things. But look around New York. It's getting worse and worse all the time. And until crime's fixed here, if it's ever fixed, more and more people are going to leave this city every single day. Is he on Staten Island? The answer is no. All right, Ben. So you wrote to me, and you and I have talked a little bit about New York City. I know that you're fleeing New York City. I can't imagine why.
Sarcasm?
Can you give people an idea on why you're leaving New York City?
It's a myriad of issues. For me, primarily, it's the noise pollution. Over the last 5 years or so in particular, it's gotten really bad, out of control. But the environment itself is also dirty and dingy, and it's not pleasant. You know, I can name all the things that you've probably heard countless times: the high traffic, you know, again, the noise pollution, the actual garbage pollution. People in general are pretty apathetic, very passive aggressive, you know, and I'm sure throughout most of the U.S. there are a lot of places like New York is how bad it is here, but I'm born and raised, and it's time for a change.
Yeah, the crime is up, and you know, I'm doing a video about the most dangerous places in New York State, and a lot of places in upstate are terrible. You know, Buffalo, Syracuse, Rochester, which I'm sure you knew about, and then some smaller towns and cities. But New York City has had a huge spike in crime in the last couple of years. Some of that's COVID. That's what they blame it on. What's the crime like in New York City in the last year or two?
Well, I'll be the first to admit that I haven't experienced anything firsthand other than just the general restlessness of people and noticing the increased lawlessness of just people being really shitty, for lack of a better word. I live in a particular neighborhood where there's a lot of people who will throw house parties until the late hours, literally until the following morning, doesn't matter what day of the week. And they do this knowingly that the police literally won't do anything. It's pretty bad. You know, they do it knowing they can get away with just being unruly dipshits, just making it even more unlivable around here, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But I can also recount even just growing up, you know, like I said, born and raised, I grew up here as a child, my adolescence, and, you know, my early adult years, and I have witnessed a fair amount of crime myself, violent crime. It was actually, in terms of violence, it has gotten a little bit better, at least in my immediate neighborhood and city. But I've noticed in other areas it has deteriorated. Like, for example, as I keep harping on, people in general have just become more and more just nasty.
Mm-hmm. So lawlessness. Why do people in New York City feel like they can get away with whatever they want?
That's a good question. This is something that I ponder myself, and I think I might have come to understand it a little bit more. But I think a lot of it comes down to virtually everybody is jaded in some way. You know, it really is a dog-eat-dog world here. You know, everyone is really out for themselves, and they don't give a damn about anybody other than themselves. And when they want to have a good time, they'll do so ignoring even our most basic noise ordinance laws, which we do have. It is there. You know, if you go onto New York's website, New York State and the city, we do have noise laws that basically state by 10 p.m. you have to keep your music down to a certain decibel, but none of it's enforced.
Mm-hmm.
So everyone's pretty much like, you know what, this place sucks. I don't care about you. I want to have a good time when I want to have a good time. You be damned if you want to have a nice, quiet night's rest or just anything in particular. People are so oblivious to others and extremely inconsiderate.
Yeah, I get that vibe. I've been there. I hear that two big reasons why the crime's going up in New York City is You have the bail reform where they're basically just catch and release with people. And then police just feel like not only are they outmanned, but they aren't, they're told basically kind of stand down on some crimes. They don't want confrontation. They're outnumbered. The morale is down. Criminals just feel emboldened in New York City right now.
This is all absolutely true. As a matter of fact, I'm glad you brought that up, because I've actually had NYPD show up to my house on a few extreme cases of noise complaints that I've filed throughout the years. And virtually every time I've had the officers here, whenever they did actually show up, I can see it in their eyes. Like, they want to help. They genuinely do care. It's just they are so disenfranchised and so disempowered. The last time I had officers here, they literally told me, all we can do is go over to your neighbors, tell them to turn the music off. We know they'll turn it off while we're here. And as soon as we leave, we know they're going to turn it back on, because we're not allowed to show up more than once. Mm-hmm. They cannot confiscate sound equipment anymore. They cannot even issue fines. I don't know when that changed, what caused that to happen. I can only guess maybe somebody got busted, some house parties that maybe had deep connections, because, of course, there's a lot of corruption in New York City governance, a lot of bureaucracy. I'm sure there's lots of nepotism that plays into it. Basically, everyone gets to get away with almost everything but murder. It's like the only thing you can get in trouble for around here.
No, they're getting away with murder all the time. I mean, that you can't even ride, right now, I mean, in New York City and across the country in the 90s, it was like terrible. I think there were more than 2,000 murders in New York in the 90s. And then crime went down a lot. And then we had Giuliani in office, which really helped kind of do a lot for that. And then, now we're back up to where we were before, where people are afraid to ride the buses. People are afraid to get on the subways. In broad daylight, people are getting punched and grabbed and kicked and stabbed. It's almost like there's no law. And NYPD has consistently blamed the state, especially, Cuomo, for his decisions to, let people go and not prosecute, and then the DAs and all that. So it's a scary time to be in New York City right now. I was lucky when I was there. It was COVID, so it was kind of dead, and I got to walk around and not feel threatened. But I hear it's just out of control right now. But
yeah, I have actually been avoiding actively, even before the current pestilence broke out in early 2020. Right before that, I swore off taking public transit, because I used to commute regularly into Manhattan, Midtown Manhattan, for my line of work, and I swore it off just out of principle that I can't stand wasting 3 to 4 hours of my life, 2, 3, 4, 5 days a week for just a miserable time to get to and from work. And thankfully, I was already transitioning away from having to be on site for a lot of my work to being able to work remotely from home. And nowadays, I just work for myself as a freelance IT contractor. So I was able to kind of dodge that bullet, but just seeing what's gone on in the past couple of years in particular further solidifies my decision to avoid public transit. Because, as you rightfully pointed out, the subway in particular, it is a very dark, dull, and dirty, dingy place to be. I've seen a lot of weird things throughout the years. I've been in the subways at all kinds of times of the day, whether it's, the middle of the night, even on a weekday, just going to work 5, 6, 7 in the morning. There's a lot of weird stuff going down there, and I've been seeing frequently on local news of all kinds of attackings going on, which thankfully I've never been a victim of. But yeah, I'm seeing it's definitely an uptick, and I'm glad I don't have to be down there anymore, and I surely don't wish it upon anyone to take that chance of just getting in a sardine can underground with who knows what kind of crazy person.
Do you know a lot of other people that are fleeing New York City besides you?
Surprisingly, no, because sadly, most of the people I do know, they want to stay here, which I can't figure that out. So I'm the odd one out. Literally.
Why are they staying? Why are people continuing to? Family, I understand.
Right.
Jobs.
Is
that it? I mean,
that's largely the crux of what it is for most people. Whether it's my friends and family in particular, and even just the general populace. It's weird because I think most New Yorkers who were born and raised like myself, we kind of resign ourselves like, this is it. But I'm a little bit different because I have very unique circumstances that gives me the freedom and flexibility to largely pick up and go, which, as you know, I'm in the process thanks to your help. And, it's kind of like I've taken the red pill, just to make that cheesy Matrix analogy. Like, I've seen better. I've been to better places. I know how much better the standard of living is outside of New York City. And I also do know there are far better cities than New York City. New York literally is overrated. And I can't stress that enough. It's a fine place to visit if you want entertainment. It's a fine place to do maybe some kind of short-term work. Maybe if you get a really big employment opportunity and the compensation's recompensed with the cost of living, sure, maybe. But if by and large you can afford, and I don't mean financially, I mean just, philosophically and just living choice-wise, don't come here. It's absolutely not worth the insane cost of living for the very low quality of life. Most people here are just very jaded, disgruntled, and it's true when people, New Yorkers, we really do hate each other. Yeah. We do. We'll be nice to tourists, but given enough time, any tourist, I think if they stick around long enough, they'll start to kind of take in that negativity and become a bit more antsy. So most people just kind of, those that live here, they just kind of, they literally live with it. They just feel like they have no alternative. It's all they know. Most people haven't even bothered to travel all that much because, frankly, even just getting out, just the act of leaving the state, even for a day trip, it's such a Herculean effort that takes so much time and energy. Most people would rather just stay put.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't blame them. I've heard that the best place to live in New York City is Staten Island. Is that true?
I don't really know. I've spent very little time in Staten Island, although I will say from the number of times I've passed through it, traveling to and from certain parts of New Jersey or just anywhere else in the country, it does look nice. I'll give it that, at least the parts I've seen from the highways, but I cannot really speak to that with any real firsthand experience. I don't think I've ever actually been anywhere in Staten Island. I might have done a job once or twice, but I've never visited anyone there. I have no idea what the residential areas look like, apart from what little I have seen on the highway. It looks nice, but that's about all I can grant it from my very limited views of it.
Mm-hmm. I have not spent any time east of Queens on Long Island. I hear that that's a really nice place to be, though.
Yes, it absolutely is. I spent 3 years living in Long Island for, literally 3 years, as I just said. From 18 to 21, I lived there. That's literally where I grew up and became an adult. And I miss it so dearly. I had the very rare opportunity to live in Bethpage at the border of Levittown. It's a very nice spot. Very middle-class area, not super upscale, but, not overly expensive. I was renting the basement of my cousin's house, and it was a great place for me to kind of get my life together. I was going through a lot of personal problems at home, which have since been rectified. And, it was much cleaner out there. That was actually the tipping point for me when I started to really come to learn just how crappy New York City is. New York State, which we really should delineate, as I see a lot of your viewers in the comment section will say, when I say I'm from New York, I mean the state, not the city. So I do want to draw that very, very clear line in the sand. New York State is nice. Long Island is nice. Many parts of Long Island. There are some crappy parts. I have seen them. I've been through them. But I would say the majority of Long Island is very nice. I have been all the way to the lighthouse at the end of the island. I forget the name off the top of my head. It's beautiful. But the main problem I have with Long Island is the fact that it's literally trapped behind New York City. So if you're a Long Island resident and you want to go anywhere outside of Long Island, whether that's New York City, which why the hell would you, other than possibly work, but anywhere else, like let's say you want to go to, Connecticut or maybe visit someone in New Jersey or just go anywhere outside of New York State, you're trapped behind the city. You have to pass through the city. And as I've alluded to before, the act of escaping the city is such a big task. It just takes so much time and energy to deal with that horrible, horrible, soul-crushing traffic. So I do know a decent number of people on Long Island. Most Long Islanders, they stay there. They do all their living and working in Long Island. They rarely leave the island, which I don't blame them. It's much nicer out there. It may as well be its own state, or even its own country for that matter. It's quite amazing.
Well, hopefully New York can get it figured out. I don't think crime's going to continue to spike the way it is. It's got to come down eventually. They're just going to keep electing the same people that are just doing this over and over again in that state, though. There's no change in sight. I don't see anybody with any sensibilities taking over the leadership of your state, and I don't blame you for leaving at all. So,
yeah, well, no one can choose where they're born, but I do believe we can choose where we live our lives. So I would definitely encourage everyone, look around you, and if you're not happy, then start looking for other places to go. I think it's only natural that humans find a nice place to settle down, and for me, this is not it.
Are you looking to move and need advice? I do consulting. That's right. I'll sit down and talk about where the next perfect place for you and your family should be. I do it all the time. Together, let's find you a new home that's safe and checks all your boxes. You can get my email in the description to find out how I can help you find your perfect relocation. And I can also help you find your new house, too. Email me and I'll work with you. I'm not just helping you figure out where to move, but I can help you find your perfect home, too. That's right. Someone's a realtor now. Who wants to deal with a realtor they don't know when you can have me help you, right? Hey, everyone. So it's pretty clear by now that elected leaders aren't going to help you. If you don't like what you saw in this video, demanding change won't work. You're going to have to do it on your own. If you want to be safe and want your community to be a place where people want to live, you're going to have to clean the place up yourselves. You're going to have to work with your friends and neighbors to lower crime. Politicians clearly don't care as much anymore. It's up to us.
This is Sage, Nick's manager. This has been a Corner House Entertainment production.